Welcome to RECO12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking this path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking on this path. Speakers from past meetings have represented so many different fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. In fact, today we're adding one of those in David F., who is a member of Gamblers Anonymous, a compulsive gambler, and he'll be speaking to us on cross addiction, being his story. And we'll get to his talk in the Q&A afterwards here in just a minute. But first, for a little bit of business. The RECO12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. If you've not listened to any of the other RECO12 podcasts, including RECO12 Shares, RECO12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M., the RECO12 Big Book Roundtable podcasts, I highly recommend you check them out wherever you listen to podcasts. The links to these podcasts will be in the show notes of this and all RECO12 episodes, and I'll also post them here in the chat of the live meeting. I'm super excited about all of these resources and more to come. Just had somebody bring an idea to me yesterday that I'm excited to see how that develops. So maybe we'll have another one coming out in the next year or so. Your donations and subscriptions are making this all possible, as there are costs to build and maintain all of them. On that note, RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our Step 12 in this manner. I want to thank a few of our spearheads and donors. Thank you to Therese, Christina, Catherine, and Evan for your donations this last week. Those really help in our mission to share this message with others. If you out there would like to become a spearhead and support RECO12 in our mission, please consider going to www.reco12.com/support and making either a one-time donation or becoming a monthly spearhead donor. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for today, David F. And here's a little bit about David. David is from Manchester, UK, and is a compulsive gambler, cocaine addict, married for 21 years, has 3 children. He is a business owner who fell into the darkness of gambling, which brought him to his knees for the first time at age 35 in 2005. While a member of GA, Gamblers Anonymous, he never embarked on the 12 steps in the GA fellowship. He only went to meetings and never worked with a sponsor. His last bet was the 14th of January 2013, but soon after leaving the rooms of GA, late in 2014, he crossed over into cocaine and alcohol abuse. By October 2020, his life was burned to the ground once more. His marriage was hanging by a very frayed thread, and his relationships with the world and the people within it were disintegrated. He lost his business due to his addiction in 2021 and finally started working the steps of recovery at that point. His life since has never been the same. And after experiencing a spiritual awakening, he yearned for more, and God graced him with a new sponsor in late 2022, where he embarked on the 12 steps for the second time, working the Big Book workbook, further enriching his fourth dimension experience. His relationship with his wife is blossoming. His relationship with family, friends, and others have been restored. And David is now filled with hope and courage and faith, and has regained his integrity, and is so very grateful to a power he calls God. And I'm really excited to hear from you, David. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Justin. And my name is David. I'm an extremely grateful recovered addict. And I also identify, as you said, as a compulsive gambler. I am a member of CA, GA, and also a member of the Spiritual Gangster Group. It's a great honor for me today, Justin, to share with you and your audience and anyone who is listening to my story. Quite right. You said my last bet was January the 14th, 2013. It seems a long time ago to me, over 10 years. However, that date doesn't reflect when I truly gained recovery, which was only around 3 years ago, after I embarked on the journey of the 12-step recovery program. I'm going to try and detail for you briefly, whilst I forgot to put my timer on. I just put it on. Sorry, Justin. So I'm going to detail briefly an outline of my destructive nature and my addictive behavior and my complete unmanageability, which has just been described, burnt my life to the ground on a number of occasions. It led to a very distorted view of reality for me over a long period of time. And I'm going to tell you how my life changed because of how I changed and the value of the resolution of addiction by a product of an awakening through a connection with a higher power, done to me, but not by me. I think finally, I'm going to just let you know what life's like for me today. Living fully awake in reality and advocating a life in the 12 steps of recovery. So for me, I've got two doors of main addiction, and that is the door of compulsive gambling, which is my first door, and my second door is cocaine addiction. So earlier in my life, I'm going to now describe how gambling took over my life, what I lost, and how I managed, how I didn't manage really. It's not how I managed. I was 35 and married with 3 young children. I had a business partnership going on with my brother, and unfortunately, the business over a short period of time was successful, but started the business, ran into some difficulties, and his liabilities were my liabilities. My profits were his profits, and vice versa. So unfortunately, I had to do my best to bail out the difficulties that my brother's side of the business was in, although we ran things separately. And that became overwhelming, and soon found myself in a position that I'd never faced. See, in my life, I'd either, if I faced difficulty, I could either walk around it, step back from it, climb over it. Conflict, I didn't like. It wasn't something that was in my backyard. I'd always back away from it. And it was at a time where I'd lost the business. I was working for someone else. I was in debt. I got a tax bill that every single year of my life I paid. It wasn't even that big. I mean, proportionally, it wasn't that big at all. And something came to me in my head. My first thought was, you know what? I remember gambling when I was younger. I remember when I was in my teens, I'd won a big bet. Maybe, just maybe, I can go to the casino and solve my debt issue today by beating the casino at blackjack, which now I can look back and tell you that was my first delusional thought, really, that I can recognize. So I tried to fix a big financial problem with a quick fix of winning some money, which I did at first. I mean, within a few hours, I couldn't believe the amount of money that I had in front of me. But for some reason, I couldn't cash out. I mean, I won it 5 times over the amount that I did, but I didn't have sufficient force to collect the chips in front of me and walk 20 feet across from where I was sitting to the cashier's desk. And I soon realized that a compulsive gambler doesn't have a collect button. So over a period of time, I went back chasing the thrill, the buzz of a winning hand. It was nothing like I'd ever felt before. Consistently around the casinos, doing what I was doing, my life quickly spiraled into huge debt. And over time, I found I was consumed when I wasn't gambling by thoughts of my next bet, whether I'd won or I'd lost. And over a period of the next 8 years, I turned to stealing to feed my compulsive habit. I lied and cheated about my whereabouts consistently, always trying to keep my gambling habits from being found out. So I acted very surreptitiously. And in that time, I tried everything to stop, but I couldn't. I tried even to control the amounts that I'd spend in the casino, but I soon found myself returning to the ATM over and over. I couldn't control it when I wasn't betting. I couldn't control it when I was betting. I couldn't beat this thing, which eventually, after around 5 years, brought me to complete unmanageability. And I gambled not only in the casino, but I gambled my wife, my kids, and my business. I entered a very frail, dejected, defeated person entering the rooms of GA. Once my family, only after my family found out what had been happening, which I couldn't keep it a secret any longer. I was desperate to conceal. My compulsive gambling was desperate for me to conceal it from anyone else, just to felt straitjacketed from being able to ask for help. So I went to my local GA meeting and I met people just like me. Some people were worse off. Some people had different gambling habits. Some people had been to jail. I heard that some people had tried to commit suicide because of their compulsive gambling. And to be honest, listening to all these people felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. It felt like for the first time in a long time that I was going to get better, listening and talking to people about gambling behavior. People from fellowship started calling me, asking me about my welfare, how I felt. And do you know what? For a short time, it got better. Going to meetings once a week, life got better, my problems seemed to disappear. And after about a year, I had the notion that maybe, just maybe, I could gamble like a normal person. To which, to my despair, led me to another 3 years of beating myself up and the people around me. My compulsive gambling got progressively worse than it did last time, until I was once again beat and broke, and no other choice but to come back into the rooms of GA for a second time. And this time, I never had another bet. And mainly that was through fear. From the depths of where that last bet took me, I realized that I just couldn't bet again. I just couldn't. And however, that didn't stop my addiction from crossing over into something else. And soon after my last bet in 2013, I started to use Coke. And every GA meeting, after every GA meeting, it was like my ego rewarding me. And up until then, I would seldom use. It wasn't really a part of my life. Occasionally, I'd use at parties or gatherings, and never exclusively on my own. I stopped eventually going to GA at the beginning of 2014, and I never embarked on wanting to take the steps, as I thought it was seen only as for people who were pretty desperate. And I had a bit of contempt for the 12 steps. And even though I had no idea what they were, fancy that, contempt for something I knew nothing about. So slowly over time, my Coke habit grew over the years. That once started as a reward system in my head for stopping gambling each week, grew into a very raging or consuming Coke addiction. Eventually stopped working as a treatment, and even started using it to cure my fear, which was growing and growing rapidly. It helped me get through my fear of the mornings, the afternoons, and eventually into the evenings. And within 5 years of having my last bet, I'd burnt my life once again to the ground. I'd burnt my relationships. I'd burnt another business. Hope seemed to be, for me, an amplifier to my unmanageabilities, a bit like squirting fuel on a fire that created a bigger daily explosion. And this time, my wife wasn't so understanding. I pulled off not yet a healed scar. It wasn't yet healed from the gambling, from the dishonesty, and I ripped that wide open. And she gave me an ultimatum, which was ultimately to change the course of my life. And I entered a rehab for 28 days in October 2020. And I'm actually pausing here because that was a real sliding doors moment in my life. And the first thing I did was I was requested and asked to write a life story and look at, and you know what? I'd never done that before. And looking back, I made a list of everything that I lost because of my behavior, because of what I did in my life. And in effect, it became what was known later to me as my loser list. I'd lost time, lots of it. I lost money. I'd lost relationships, businesses, definitely ill health, my integrity gone, my reputation, morality, and the list goes on. So when I finally removed at first gambling and then eventually the drugs, I started to sort of commence to relate to life. Started relating to my life. It was the first time I'd stopped. And I think for me, during that period of those 28 days, I just got clean. I took with me some paperwork, posts that I'd not opened for maybe a year and a half. I caught up on bills. It took me a week to get through paperwork that I'd just been derelict of my responsibility of. Mortgage, bills, you name it. And started to finally just wake up ever so slowly. And soon after I left the treatment center, I had a sponsor that was kindly arranged by a friend in recovery, and I embarked on the 12 steps. And that was the starting point of my journey that I'd mentioned at the beginning. And getting a sponsor taught me through the ideas of recovery. Steps 1 to 9, the recovery parts of the steps, turning this understanding of my self-centeredness, selfish nature, self-centeredness to other-centeredness. And finally getting to step 10, being spiritually aligned through a connection to a higher power and a way to live my life for the rest of my life on a daily basis, steps 10 to 12. So as soon as I understood at the very start and I embarked on doing the steps, and I'm not going to describe the steps of what each step means, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the most important aspects that changed me as a person. And I understood and admitted that I was powerless. I had no choice over gambling, no choice over drugs, and more importantly, later to realize no choice over my thinking, and that my life was unmanageable, which it was. It was just a disaster after a disaster after a disaster. And there was nothing humanly possible that could keep me from permanently stop from using drugs, drinking, and gambling or acting out. It became a lot easier for me to believe in something else that could restore my sanity and my thinking, and that my old thinking needed a big overhaul, an update. So when it came to working the steps and making a decision, number one, yeah, I admitted my life was really messed up. And two, did I want to be sane again? Clearly thinking, I certainly did. And I was prepared to do whatever it took. So when it came to making a decision in 3, it meant me claiming spiritual progress. A decision that I made for a relationship with a power to become empowered, simply put. And my awakening, or if you want, my first experience started for me around step 4. That was tough. That was a soul crusher. And it was hard work. It was embarrassing. But started to see and peer through the curtain for the first time around myself and the circumstances and the people that kept me in bondage for all the years that I was using and gambling. I could see I was in my own jail, slowly waking up. So continuing through the steps, there was a huge amount of willingness to embark, practice. And for me, the desire after having that daily addiction around cocaine, around 3, it just gone. And I was amazed. I was intrigued and I wanted more. I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. I'm a seeker. And there was something definitely yearning in me to know and do more. And it's, as a compulsive gambler, that compulsive attitude to want spirituality, I think, comes from, I want that instantly. I want it now. I want it like the next car to come out as quickly as I possibly could. I wanted an injection of spirituality that I realized that over time that I wasn't going to get it instantly. It's going to come over a period of time. It's a process and it's a journey. So working steps 5 through to 6, 7, embarking on that power, that relationship with God, then getting right with others in the latter half of the 9 steps, to being spiritually aligned, getting to 10. Life was a whole lot better for me after steps 9. Fear started to diminish. Those promises that are mentioned were given to me. And understanding what spirituality meant was a change. It was a change in me, and certainly by 9, I had changed. And spirituality, what it means to me to be aligned spiritually, is to know how I feel. To be able to have a conversation with either my sponsor or someone else that I'm aligned to spiritually today. I have to have spiritual direction. I need to know how I feel. Do I feel alienated? Do I feel connected? Do I feel a part of, or do I feel separate from? Do I feel agitated, or do I feel sedated? I've got to know these things. You see, the compulsiveness out of alignment, I can rip open a letter as fast as I can. I want to open a box. It's the compulsive nature that's in me that I have to slow down, relax, breathe, and take it easy and carry on. For me, compulsiveness is quicker, faster, now feeling. Sometimes I do wake up today in a program of recovery, and sometimes the fear is back. Not every day is perfect. And I can get fear around rebuilding a business. So much work to do, so many emails to read, so much chaos sometimes. But I have to focus. I've got a toolkit at my disposal today. I have prayer, I have meditation, and I have faith in a higher power. And I'm grateful to be surrounded by people who are helpful to me. Today, I'm in the business of being accountable, and I'm in the business of being transparent. Far from those days of me being surreptitious. I'm still in the business to make mistakes. And sometimes one of the biggest mistakes is that I should be further on in my recovery. I get a little bit discouraged when I know that I'm in a desperate need of a program of recovery one day at a time. Maybe I think I should have evolved more. The laws of recovery 100% apply to me. And sometimes when those overwhelming feelings and the overwhelming stuff comes over, I let the steps work themselves for me, and I breathe. I can ask for help. And today, I do have an invitation to use my past, as it says in the book. It's my best asset. And I use it as an invitation for me to take some responsibility. And what does that mean for me? It talked to you about before about wanting that instant spiritualization. And I definitely resonate with what I said, because a real addict, a real compulsive gambler wants that injection of it. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm trying sometimes, I'm trying to soak up as much as I possibly can all the time. And I realize that at this stage, coming up to 3 years, that I'm like a sponge. And what I mean by that is if I pour too much water over a sponge too fast, only a small proportion gets absorbed by the sponge. Whereas if I consistently pour smaller, manageable amounts of water into the sponge, it absorbs more water. And someone who's compulsive just needs to slow down a bit. And I want to finish on a couple of aspects insofar as what the steps, how life has changed for me from the person that I used to be to the person I am today, living steps 10, 11, and 12. And the way of doing that for me is consistency, consistency, consistency. Slowly but surely, progress is made. And I might want it quicker. It's just a part of my makeup. But life has definitely changed for me. And if you do work this, anyone that's listening, anyone that's struggling out there, you work your steps with a sponsor, these simple steps. By no means easy, but consistently working them day by day, no matter what happens to you. Keep nurturing your faith and your connection with a higher power of your understanding, and the outcome that you're hoping for, I promise you, will be disproportionately larger than anything you can anticipate. And I never knew life could be like this for me today. I've got a wonderful sponsor that rocketed me to a further part of that fourth dimension. Generally, I can say my life is good. It is. But when I get disturbed, usually by my teenagers, my business, I'm out of the results business. So I've got to put my faith in my higher power that everything's meant to be for me. And when I do that, I can breathe. You have to do some things if it's a change that you're looking for. And if I stick to the essentials of recovery, which is the recipe outlined in the big book, because though being open-minded, being honest, and being willing, then perhaps, you know what, I've got a winning lottery ticket to life. And my invitation, as I first started in this last bit, was going from a child to an adult, which means taking that responsibility around my recovery on this daily basis. I'm going to leave it there, Justin. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate your share there. And I love the additional angle that we took at recovery there through your own story and your experience, strength and hope with gambling, with cocaine, with the cross addiction and everything there. I've written down a lot of notes. I have some questions for you. And I just want to remind our live audience, if you have questions for David, please type them in the Q&A link there at the bottom of your Zoom window. Looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other. We will get to as many questions as we have time for here. And begin with that. So, David, I'd like to start off with something that you said in your share here. You mentioned that when you took step 4, it was really painful. But what it was, you said this phrase, it was like peering through the curtain at myself. And I love that imagery of peering through the curtain. How does this help you even today to peer through the curtain? How do you do that on a day-to-day basis? Peer through the curtain to see yourself through a different light.
So, good question, Justin. And it's like peering through a crack of the door, if you want, looking at your behaviors. Today, I have to have in that sort of step 10, in that inventory, I have to watch myself. I have to watch for my feelings. almost like a car warning light that goes off when there's trouble ahead, looking for the warning signs. That's what I have to do daily, sweeping. The radar has to sweep every single day. And when things crop up, not if, this is life. Things do crop up. Like I said to you, we have a spiritual toolkit. I can see those things, and today I don't have to act out on them. I don't have to act out on my feelings. I'm not in that business of controlling anyone else. In fact, I don't even like using the word control anymore. I have little control over myself. I have some influence. I have no control over anything outside of myself. So those things are all too apparent and acute in recovery. I hope that answers a little bit of what you were asking there.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that leads me into another question. I mean, you said you have to do this every day. No, I don't remember exactly if you said no vacations or no days off. But well, this weekend I'm going to be going on not a vacation, but I'm going to be going out of town. I'm not going to be in my normal place. I'm going to be staying in a hotel. I'm going to be doing some things that aren't normal for me. When you have those types of situations, how do you continue that process? How do you continue not saying, hey, I'm on vacation, I'm going to give all of this stuff a day off? How do you remember to do that?
So in my early stages of recovery, I used to take a holiday. I know how that made me feel. Yeah, I'm going away on vacation with my family for 2 weeks. That's no meetings. Maybe I'll do an inventory. Maybe I won't do an inventory. Maybe I'll do a meditation. Maybe I won't do a meditation. But eventually, I saw how that, not even saw, I felt how uncomfortable that made me feel. And it made me yearn all the more for wanting to get home, get back on my meetings, get back into my routine. For me, compulsive gambler addict needs routine. I talked about consistency. So I know what it's like for me to be, look, when I'm out the steps, if I'm not consistently sponsoring, meditating, cleaning house in my inventory, my sponsor's going to tell me what you're not doing right, because if you're following instruction, the promises should come true for you. Now, for me, the answer is just consistency. No matter where you go, what you do, there's a lot of online meeting, far more than there ever has been. So it's easy to connect up. I know what happened to me when I was derelict of my responsibilities in my family, as a father, as a son, as a friend. So today, I know that ultimately I have to be responsible, which I talked about at the end, and take that route around being disciplined.
And thank you for sharing that, David. And what does that look like? What does your morning routine, your daily routine? Are you willing to share kind of, hey, this is how I put this into practice on a daily basis? Is there a routine, a habit, or is it just something that you put throughout the day, whenever, however?
No, Justin, it's definitely quite disciplined. So from the moment I wake up, my first sponsor got me into the habit of, even before I'd open my eyes, taking a step through prayer, connecting with a higher power immediately to help me get through my day, set aside my difficulties, and help me do the right thing by him. So not long after that, I might have some breakfast. Early morning, I might, in the last few years, I tend to exercise. And then I'll do a meditation. And that meditation can last anywhere between 10 or 20 minutes. And then I'll say some prayers after that to set me up. And from there on in, if things crop up for me throughout the day, I might go to what my sponsor calls pause land, just to stop. I might do another meditation if things look for some answers, get some guidance around my thinking. And then if it calls for me, maybe I have service still on meetings twice a week, and I do another meeting as well. And then I look at my schedule around my work and see also my work not only with my sponsees, but also my business. So it's a fine balance, which is something I'm trying to always spin, balance between my recovery, my family, and my business, not necessarily in that order. We know it's paramount. We keep family at the top. Hope that gives you some explanation to my routine.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for walking through that. I appreciate it. I know that routine is vital for my daily serenity and peace of mind also. So thank you for sharing that. We have a question from an anonymous attendee in our live audience. And what I'd like you to invite you to do, David, is to kind of put yourself in the shoes of this person that the anonymous attendee is talking about and see what would be helpful for you. So here's the question. I'm suspicious of my husband that my husband started gambling again. He quit on his own and he's not willing to work the 12 steps. What would you suggest for me?
Okay, good question. So, as someone, look, my wife had lots of suspicions after my first attempts in GA, of me trying to go out there on my own, and she out there on my own again, if you want. And yeah, she had a good understanding that probably I was gambling. Now, my advice to her husband would be to maybe have a frank, open discussion with him and say, look, is it something he thinks he's got a problem with? And maybe does he need some help? And maybe ask him around how much he thinks he's gambling and get some reality checks on what actually is happening. You see, the hard thing is, Justin, is that compulsive gamblers, no matter what, like any addiction, will do anything they can to have that next bet. And unfortunately, through experience, unless there is a desire and willingness, usually we have to be pretty beat and mangled to want that recovery, the desperate state or gift of recovery, as we hear about. The only thing that she can do is try to put some information in front of him, try and maybe give him some advice around his behaviors, trying holding up a little bit of a mirror and accountability in his actions.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love the chapter in the big book, Two Wives, often gets kind of looked down upon these days because of the verbiage, the language that's used, the 1930s language that's used in it. But there's so much good stuff in there about how to help or make available options for those who are struggling. And I think there's some good resources in there. And I think what you shared is really good. Thank you, David. And I think that leads into one of the things that I wrote down, one of the notes I took. You said when you first went into the rooms of GA, there were people around you, some that had things worse off than you, some that, maybe weren't quite as low as your bottom, some who had attempted suicide, some who had been to jail. Talk to us a little bit about high bottom versus low bottom, about rock bottom. When is rock bottom enough to motivate somebody to change?
So I can only speak of my experience, and my rock bottom was complete and utter unmanageability to get me through, not like I said, not just the day, but it was even parts of the day. So inescapable thoughts originally of gambling and then of cocaine. When you have these inescapable thoughts and you have got no control but to act out upon them, and through that, the resultant being that relationships are lost, life is that unmanageable that you cannot do anything but act out on your desire. That's the point of rock bottom. And for some people get it earlier than others. Some people have to go through some pretty nasty stuff. For me, it was being caught. And my wife's ultimatum of, listen, here's your choice. Lose your family, go, or get into rehab and get yourself better. She gave me two choices. And for me, that was enough. Flash moment of losing everything. and I nearly did, to grabbing on with both hands.
Yeah, and I think for me it's similar. I had to come to a point where I admitted there was I was going to lose everything, and I had to be willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to try something different. I've tried all this other stuff, and 12 step was not for me. That was my take. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not one of those people. I can't go into that room until I realized that I am one of these people. And what a beautiful thing it was when I finally accepted that when I'm in these rooms, I'm among my brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful thing. All right. So one of the so you shared, David, that when you quit gambling, when you were done with your gambling, eventually cocaine came in, eventually drinking came in, and perhaps you were initially a type 1, take it or leave it with cocaine, and then it just developed and grew. Talk to us a little bit about that. And you did talk a little bit about this process, but talk to us a little bit about how one can be a type 1, meaning I can take it or leave it with anything, and then let that justify it into where it becomes a full-blown addiction.
Sure. So, like I said, up to the age of 35, I'd probably tried. I was never a big drinker. I used to maybe smoke a little bit of marijuana at university, not long after I gave up. If I drank, maybe I drank as light drink at parties. And if I look back, when I did drink, I would binge drink. But then I'd stop. You know what? The thought of drinking alcohol over certainly up to the ages of 40, in my 40s, was never there. And the same for Coke. Really, if there was parties around, maybe someone's birthday, New Year's Eve, and it was there, I'd partake. And that, I never had another thought of it. So soon after I'd stopped gambling without any defense, that soon sped right up from occasional use to becoming maybe a weekend party for one. That then soon turned into, do you know what? I'll try it on a Monday. It makes me feel better. Gives me some energy around getting up on Monday and going to work, to becoming a daily habit. And at some point, and I can't tell you where, I can't pinpoint me going from the moderate to the alcoholic. I can't tell you. There's an invisible line that crossed. All I do know is that when I attempted to stop on my own power, I couldn't.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One thought that I have, and maybe this is probing a little bit here, but is there something in your life that is currently a take it or leave it that you're tempted to move into more and more of it? Maybe it's not as initially what we think would be damaging as those things, but is there something else that you're thinking of trying to say, hey, I need to be aware of this?
Sure. And that can be, look, for a cross addict like me, that can easily fall into work. Like I told you, I go to the gym. I have to train 4 days a week. Some things are good for me. Some things are bad for me. I can easily scroll on my phone. I've got to stop. I can scroll on my phone for 20 minutes. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Where have I just been for 20 minutes? That can easily spiral out of control. When I came out of rehab, I remember I was waking up in the middle of 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, going downstairs and going into what we call the sweet cabinet in my house, eating chocolate in the middle of the night. Soon I had to watch my sugar intake, because that, you know what, that easily crossed out as well. So for me, all areas, I have to be on alert. I have to watch myself, especially when things I do too much can have a negative impact on my mind and my certainly my health.
Yeah, and I think this leads into one of the questions we have from an anonymous attendee from our audience. This person says, you mentioned the word defense against the first bet or against the first line, that you have no defense against that. This person says, my thinking is my issue. how do you get the first defense against the first thought?
Okay, we don't have any defense against our first thought, none whatsoever. That's something we just don't have any control about. But we don't act out on our first thought. What we learn to do is perhaps go, okay, that's my first thought. And you go, okay, no, that's not right. And sometimes it takes me 2, 3, or even 4 attempts after I've paused, really sought guidance. And what does that look like? The third or fourth thought's usually the right one. The first and second thought, when faced with a decision which I am uncertain about, that's when I seek guidance from a higher power. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's really a powerful thing. If to seek guidance from higher power, I think is the solution to all things. But when do I get to that? I appreciate you going through that and helping us see that. Okay, another question from another anonymous attendee. Did you have to work your recovery in separate fellowships, or did you manage to recover from them both at the same time? And what are your thoughts on that? If I'm a compulsive gambler, do I need to go to GA? If I'm a sex addict, do I need to go to SA or whatever other S fellowship, etc.? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question, and something that's really pertinent to someone with 2 or 3 different addictions. So initially, in the early stages of my recovery, I decided after I entered CA and I did the steps with my original sponsor, I decided that I wanted to go back to GA. For some reason, I had a yearning to go back to that meeting that wasn't even 12 steps. It wasn't even spoken about in the meetings very often. And I wanted to go back and give them the message of recovery to one addict suffering to another at the end of the day. So funny because I've never stopped going to GA. And since I have sponsored to a dozen people in the GA rooms that never normally would have found 12 steps. So those particular meetings that I used to go to, there was a lot of war stories. There wasn't really a solution-based meeting. So I go back now with my solution to help other suffering addicts. And the answer to really is, look, 12 steps is all encompassing. And I learned through my second so grateful sponsor, Nikki M, that the way we sponsor through the Big Book sponsorship covers all afflictions and addictions. So no matter what we suffer from, we all have 2 things in common. No matter whether you're a cocaine addict, alcoholic, an overspender, an overeater, someone who's maybe a debtor, it doesn't matter. The 2 things that we have that are the same is we all lose the same. We all lose the same, and we all gain recovery the same through the 12-step program.
I love that, and I really appreciate that. I think what you shared about after receiving the solution, wanting to go back and give back, I think that's vital. I think that's something that's really important. And I see that in my own life too, I want to go and be, well, the big book phrase, and I'm going to misquote it. I don't know it word for word, is something I'm stopping to seek what I can take out of those meetings and look what I can put back into the stream of life in those meetings. When I receive the solution, I want to share that and put it back into the stream of life. Any thoughts on that at all, David, before we
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's my whole purpose for going to GA today. I'm not going to GA. I mean, essentially, I'm going in directly, not to recover. I don't need to hear the message, but I need to pass that message on. And that is my purpose. There's one thing that becomes very clear. What has become clear to me in my recovery is what I need to be doing. And I need to be sponsoring the hell out of people. No questions asked. So when I go back to GA and I see people in those rooms and they're not hearing the message, and all they're hearing his war story about how they, a bit of, well, you can call it in other rooms, junkie pride, how one person's story is worse than the others and how mine beats yours. I mean, I heard that stuff for a long time, and that was driving people away from GA in my experience, in my meetings. What they do need to hear is how to recover from that hopeless state of mind, because no amount of people shouting at you to stop doing what you're going to do, essentially through fear, or Bill describes it as that frothy emotional peel. It didn't stop me. It didn't stop me. My wife crying, my daughters, please, daddy, stop. Nothing was going to stop me. So no one in a meeting hearing anything about what happened to them is going to stop. They need to know the power of recovery comes through transformation, and that transformation comes through attaching yourself to a spiritual experience, which is guided through a nurturing of a higher power.
Man, that's a beautiful way to close this out. But before we do close this out, do you have any other final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us, David?
Other than for me, out of the chaos, my mind generally wakes up on a daily basis. Sometimes it can be a bit chaotic. And even after I've said my prayer, I stop. I meditate. I look for guidance. I go and act. The whole, mentioned this a few times today. For me, it's about discipline. I'm such an undisciplined person, and around lots of areas of my life, I have to be disciplined about my connection, like I said, nurturing with my higher power. I have to keep going. I have to keep seeking more. And that's always, maybe it's a small degree, maybe it's a larger degree, but certainly keep moving forward. And that's through consistency. Thank you for letting me speak today, Justin. I hope someone somewhere has heard something that's helped them.
Well, I know I have. Thank you so much, David. That was good stuff. It was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting. And you and the live audience are out there in the recorded podcast world. If you have a question, or if we didn't get to your question here, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD@gmail.com. And join in our community and ask those questions. Answer other questions that may come up. And if you're inspired to share something of your insights in a 12-step type share, please go to RECO12 Shares SpeakPipe link that is in the show notes. And I put that in the chat also, and record a 3 or 4 minute share there. If you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to help us work our 12th step and to work your 12th step in sharing this message with others. Next week, we'll be back to recording live on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and I look forward to that. This week, it changed up a little bit as I will be participating and having a little speech at a recovery conference for the SA Lifeline Foundation. If you're interested in checking out the SA Lifeline Conference, whose theme is Come Heal With Us, a community focus on recovery from the effects of pornography, sexual addiction, and betrayal trauma. I'll post a link to it here in the chat and in the show notes. It can be attended in person or virtually. If you have questions on that or anything else RECO12 related, please send an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the step 3 prayer that David will say for us.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you once again for inviting me on here today. It's been an honor to share with you and your audience. Step 3 prayer is one of my favorite prayers, and it means the most to me. So, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Thank you, David. Everybody, keep coming back. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of